Hey, welcome to the Gianna 1970. We're going to take a look at the behind the scenes here. In the previous videos I've done from Minneapolis to Wilmer, each section of the railroad kind of giving you an overall tutorial of what's going on. No trains have been moving, it's always been still, it's always been silent. Here we're going to throw in some trains, let's get some behind the scenes. We're going to look at staging, we're going to look at kind of a pullback of the room, give you an idea of what the railroad itself looks like. And I know people have been asking questions along the way about a lot of those things, and I figured why not save the best for last? I mean, when you read a book, I'm sure you jump right to the last page to find out what happened, or fast forward to the end of the movie and see, oh, yeah, he killed her. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. It's taken me a couple years to get here, but that's what makes this kind of enjoyable. The hobby itself is not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry. You're in a hurry maybe to see more of the videos, but think of it this way. If you don't pick up watching these videos until now, there's a whole bunch of content that I've already created and you can binge watch all you want. So with that said, we're going to get downstairs, take a look at this railroad, give you a little behind the scenes, some of the history and some of the fun information that I might be able to share with you. I appreciate those that comment, both positive and negative. It entertains me both ways, and hopefully you're able to get a little something out of this particular video. So let's head downstairs. All right, here we are. This is the Gianna 1970. This is the Wilmer subdivision. We just got to the bottom of the steps. The Helix there front and center. I built that back in high school or early college years. The room itself is about 22 feet by 22 feet square. We got Union down below and then Litchfield up above. A little fun fact about Union, it's actually 9,900 scale feet. About 198 50-foot boxcars can fit into Union Yard. Down below is West Minneapolis, and up above here is Wilmer Yard. We're on the east end. We're looking west. And right below you're seeing the Superior line that then has Wayzata right down here in the foreground. It's kind of a fun little place to operate. A lot of guys, if you work the local or the hutch, you get to work Wayzata. Now this is a pinch point that I'm walking through here on the road. It's about 30 inches across. I'd advise shoot for 48 inches if you're doing planning. Give yourself some room because as you get older, you don't get smaller. Got the display case up above. I built that back in high school. Colin did the panel down below here. It's fantastic. It was done for DC, but now we're in DCC. We have the surveillance that lets us check on other portions of the railroad, and we'll cover that in a little bit as well. But we're going to duck into the other room, and this is where the operators for Wilmer and Lindale hang out. But before we get to that, we do have a little branch line here. This is the M&S interchange, as well as the industries for Lindale. And up above, you see some of the collection that my dad has had. It has his original train in it. It has a display case I did back in 8th grade. Now we are looking at Lindale. And Lyndale Yard itself, capacity-wise, is a ballpark. I think we have 24 cars is what can fit into Lindale. The Sioux interchange, we have that set up, as well as the Chicago Northwestern interchange. That's 11 cars for each interchange that go to Union. We have locomotive cards hanging down below. And we look up here into Wilmer Yard. This is a pretty good job. It'd be kind of nice to have two operators, one on each end. The view I showed you before and the view on this end. Again, another panel by Colin. And that's where West staging heads. We'll cover that at the very end of this video. And here as we go into Wilmer Yard, we can cover a little bit more as far as the history of it and how it got here. All right, we're looking at Wilmer Yard. How did you get this thing in here? Well, first of all, we didn't lay the track. The track was already laid, bench work was already done. It was done by our electrician, Colin, and he had done it in his St. Paul home down on Como Avenue. Where's St. Paul, you say? Well, it's about 45 minutes from here. We put it into the back of a Suburban, drove that sucker down the highway, brought it in through our bathroom window, swung it down through the basement, just did a little pivot, or swung it around, got it into place, and I obviously placed the yard where you currently see it. There are also a couple other sections of the railroad, which is Litchfield. That was previously in Colin's basement as well. And when he had moved out, the railroad had to go. Well, it had to go somewhere. Well, guess where it ended up? Ended up servicing our upper deck. So it's kind of an interesting little tidbit. Another interesting little tidbit is that Great Northern Big Sky Blue Caboose in the foreground. That was done by Scott Thompson. He did a 3-volume set for the Great Northern on way freight. They did maintenance of way equipment. They're fantastic books if you haven't seen them. If you have any interest in the Great Northern at all, see if you can find a copy. They kind of are few and far between, but well worth picking up if you find them. All right, I keep saying Minneapolis to Wilmer. Where is Minneapolis to Wilmer? It's in Minnesota. Minneapolis, St. Paul, if you're familiar with it at all. Wilmer is about 95 miles west of there. It's about a 2-hour car drive. I'm assuming that you hit all the lights and you're doing the speed limit because you might be able to get there in less. But nonetheless, this is the panel. This is the dispatcher panel that covers from Minneapolis to Wilmer. The laptop there is actually there to facilitate handling of DCC and running our signals. But the panels themselves do work. They turn on track power on and off, as well as different blocks. We can kill blocks if we need to. So as we update the stuff with DCC, these things actually do kind of get downgraded a little bit. Now, talking operations, we do have 15 trains in our schedule. We do not run them all in one sequence. We actually end up running those in a series of events, so we might only run 5 or 6 trains in one given operating session. But one of the best seats in the house, if you're in an operating session, would be the hostler corner. Normally, we don't stick someone back here. That's my son, William. But we say it's the best seat in the house because you get this view. Now, you get to look at, this is looking west. You also get to monitor west staging. There's 3 tracks here, about 30 cars per track. We don't maximize that. We run our train lengths at about 20 cars just for managing of number of moves. These are the locomotive cards for those tracks. Here's the staging panel that turns on track power on and off and lets you throw switches. But also, if you pop your head back up here, you get to look to East Union, which is kind of a nice viewpoint. Speaking of Union, we might as well take a look at some trains running here. This is a train that's pulling out that I actually had mentioned in a previous video. It does have tsunami sound, and we've been putting sound into decoders, and we find that the things are running so much better as we improve our decoders. So you get what you pay for. We had Digitrax, I think, in a few of these units, and they were cutting out, and we were having issues with them. As we've upgraded, it's gotten so much better. So you can hear the sound is picked up. Some people don't like the sound, so I'm not running sound through this whole thing, so you're not going to hear the locomotives through the whole entire video. But they do work, and they do sound good. The video itself, I used a microphone that picked up certain sounds, and the horns are a little bit quiet. I actually run the locomotives at a little bit quieter volume as it is. And by quieter, I mean I run at about 30%. Because with 3 engines, it's plenty loud if we listen in. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, this yard itself has a capacity of about 9,900 and so linear feet. Again, that's by scale. This here caboose is one of the X1 cabooses by the Great Northern. It was one my dad had picked up from a fellow modeler. And I think we've got 2 of these rolling on the railroad, but these were custom built by the Great Northern in the St. Cloud shop, so they're unique to the railroad. And we're definitely proud to have these 2 rolling on the rails. So this one will trail the train that we follow here today. Now we're working our way, this is through East Minneapolis. Again, the trains that come through, this is just going to be a through freight. We're not stopping anywhere, but we're going to be approaching Lindale Yard here. I'm standing here in Lindale. Well, the Lindale Yard is right underneath the camera. We have one of the cabooses there that you see in the foreground. The lead unit is an Athearn GP35. I put LED lights in, added the strobe, lightly weathered it. The second unit is a Stewart, which has got a Kato drive in it, runs really well. And the third unit, I believe, is a Bowser sound unit. All right, before we leave Lindale Yard, we're going to take one last look at X22 rolling by. That is an Overland brass model that is painted up in Great Northern. And as we watch these guys coming down the hill, you'll notice that 1970 Ford Custom that's sitting on the overpass. That was a custom Atlas model that I had done up for my dad for Christmas. But the auto racks themselves do have other Ford Customs on it, as well as some Ford Mustangs and a few other Ford manufactured 1970 vehicles. And this area kind of represents is St. Louis Park, which is actually just southwest of Minneapolis a little ways. And we're working our way into Wayzata. Now as the train's pulling into Wayzata, to give you a little history about this area, know that we're on what would be double track. It used to be double track when the railroad was originally designed because we hadn't planned on operations, but we ended up taking that second track over, which is now just a lead track for the industries on the backside, and we cut it. We cut it because we didn't want to have a double track loop running through, and we created the Superior line that we've covered in a previous video. But as we watch X22 roll across the crossing one more time here, notice just on the right-hand side, if you follow that other main line, it was cut right there. You see those end stops, and the Superior line then swings up, and that's how we handled that particular scenario. Swinging over to Delano, you'll notice that the backdrop there's actually ceiling tiles that have been stacked and then kind of roughened up. That whole area, the entire stretch that you see there, lifts out, and that gives us access to west staging that we visited earlier. If we have a derailment or something, we can just lift that out and access it. But as the train continues to roll by, X22 is about to head up the Helix, and we'll give you a little story about that. Just want to give you a little story about the Helix itself. I built that back at the end of high school, going into college, come home on the weekends, and I'd kind of chip away at it. But one thing that I'd do once the Helix was complete is I would take cars and I'd paint the wheel sides. Well, the one way I thought that I would dry wheel sides is I'd set the car at the top of the Helix, let it run all the way down to the bottom until it zipped down at Delano. It gave the paint a nice even, coat, looked fantastic. But over time, what you find is if you weather enough cars or paint enough side frames, is that you actually run a lot of paint down on the rail. So I found myself cleaning the rail a lot more often than desired. All right, we've reached the top of the Helix. We're in East Litchfield right now. As the train works its way west, we'll kind of look at the area. You notice there isn't a whole lot of scenery here. I do have a lift out that's going to go over the portion of the top of the Helix. The only weathering I've really done in terms of scenery has been that elevator. I weathered it and then did the propane facility that you see on the side, as well as this particular drawing I did back in the 90s of the Litchfield Depot. It's just there as a representation. It's not a thing of beauty, but it does what we need it to do. Now here we're going to swing onto the West Litch. We call this West Litch. It's West Litchfield. This area here, as we work our way towards Wilmer, is kind of a prided area because we just got the signals done. Of course, got that backdrop in. We're really pleased with how the backdrop looks. But this is kind of a nice vantage point to be able to watch trains rolling across at about axle level. I mentioned earlier those 1970 Ford Customs. On these auto racks, you'll see a few sprinkled in, along with some of the Mustangs. And of course, we've got to take another look here at X22 as it rolls by, heading towards Grove City. Now, as we sit here at the crossing, that is an Oxford truck. It's a company called Oxford, makes 187 scale vehicles. They got a lot of different colors, but keep an eye out for those. It's nice to have scale vehicles on your railroad. We're sitting in Grove City as these guys hit the crossing, and they're working their way just into Wilmer, coming up here shortly. But of course, before we get to Wilmer, we've got to take one last look of X22 as it rolls through Grove City. Now we got the bikers all hanging out there. Of course, they're rail fans. They got to be. Watching the train as it comes into town. It's going to be working its way into the Wilmer Depot. They're going to do a crew change. That's where we're going to leave this train. But it's tracked well all the way across the rail. And at the end of the day, that's always our end goal, is not to have any issues from a derailment standpoint. We've done a lot of work on couplers, a lot of work on car weights, coupler heights, the actual wheels themselves, swapping out wheels to get nice rolling stock. Now here we are. This is it. We're at the Wilmer Depot. As these guys pull in, they're going to do their crew change, and we're going to end this video as far as the moving trains are concerned at this point, and then we'll take one quick look at the west staging. It's kind of a goodbye salute with the horn there. And we take a look at Wilmer as we swing around here. That train would pull into west staging, And of the tracks that you see here, the two on the right, that's actually our main and our yard lead, and the one on the left is the Sioux City line. Now here it is, nice decor, right? A little pink and yellow, fantastic, perfect for trains. Well, we've actually got them hidden under this bench area. We've got 10 tracks across, storage, there's the yard lead, but this is west staging. And we can view it on the monitors here to be able to see where the trains are at. And one last overview of Union Yard. We hope you appreciated and enjoyed this particular video series that we've done for the GN in 1970. We'll continue updating you with various projects that we might be working on, whether it's scenery or buildings. But at the end of the day, from a modeler standpoint, we appreciate those that have viewed, and we'll look forward to future episodes of the GN in 1970. Take care.